Okay, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of On Point EDC. We have a very special knife to review today. It's kind of a collaborative piece from Benchmade, Doug Ritter, and Kevin Wilkins. So let's start out by covering kind of the history of Benchmade. They were founded in 1988 in California. They produce knives that are made in the USA, and their market segment is mid-range to high-end. If I were to classify this knife, I'd say it's an EDC folding utility knife. Some key characteristics is you want something that has a pocketable size and a versatile blade. You want to have the blade geometry that's going to be really good for utility tasks, as well as I'd say less focused on being tactical or self-defense oriented. So really nice to have something that has a very usable cutting edge and has the ergonomics to enable you to easily use that edge. So let's talk a little bit about the base model for this particular build. It is a Doug Ritter Mini RSK MK1. As you guys probably know, Doug Ritter is a renowned survival expert. This is kind of his take on the mini grip, and the Benchmade Mini Griptilian is, a staple in kind of the pocketable EDC knife world. So definitely taking a very nice base and building upon it. This is essentially a premium version of the mini grip. It has a high flat grind for cutting ease and strength, and this grind actually makes for excellent slicing geometry. Now, one thing you're probably also noticing that's different are the scales. So the scales are actually the WilkinsGrip BMG Mini RL in the natural titanium finish. Kevin Wilkins is actually a knife designer and maker in Berlin, Germany. He produces fixed blades, folding knives, as well as a unique line of replacement grips called WilkinsGrip. Let's go ahead and zoom out here and get into this piece. But before that, let's make sure we do our customary wristwatch check. Today I have my Armida A1 42mm in black with the date. So make sure to keep an eye out for this particular piece. It's definitely, I'm looking forward to getting a full review for On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. One thing to note is that I'm actually wearing it on an aftermarket bracelet from Strapcode, and because I actually do like it with the tapering bracelet. I think it just kind of adds that refinement versus the non-tapering, which is a little bit more bulky. And then of course with the dive clasp, it makes it extra bulky. So I think the tapering really flows well with the lines of the case. And you know what, while we're here, let's go ahead and charge this up and get some gratuitous lume going before we get into this knife review. So as you can see, extremely powerful and bright lume. I mean, this honestly, this lume really puts some of my Seikos, I should say all of my Seikos, to shame, as well as my Swiss pieces like my Oris Aquis. I don't think anything can really compete with this. This is insanely bright. I'm very, very impressed. So make sure to stay tuned. Keep an eye out for the full review on my other segment called On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. So please check that out. If you're here for the knife review, check out some of the watch review stuff as well. So as far as the Doug Ritter, mini grip, or the Mini RSK MK1, the retail price is $150. And, the street price, which you kind of get it on sale for, is about $130. So still a very good deal, especially once you start trying to kind of compare, right? You start looking at some of Benchmade's personal kind of higher end versions of the mini grip. You'll find they have a lot more different variations that are going to cost a lot more, and even if you go onto their site and do some custom versions, it'll cost you more to get one in S30V. So this is definitely a great value, and it also has this really great blade. which I'm a huge fan of. I definitely like that nice drop point, and then all the belly that's on this. It almost has kind of a leaf shape to it, which I think really plays well off of these grips due to the the kind of bulkier nature of the scales. So definitely really like that. So let's get into the blade a little bit more. It is Böhler M390, which is an Austrian company, and M390 is considered ultra premium stainless steel. So you can kind of think of it as, pretty much top of the line. This is the brand new, the latest and greatest. It has, excellent edge retention, hardness, corrosion resistance. There's really not going to be any, any compromises besides cost. This is an expensive steel, and you won't find it in cheap knives. And this is, probably the cheapest knife you can find it in is this Doug Ritter Mini Grip. So definitely great value proposition there. If we haven't already covered it, it's a drop point blade. It has that nice flat grind. It has a great stonewash finish, and it's very sharp out of box. So, I mean, you'd actually be surprised how many knives don't come that sharp out of the box. Of course, they're sharp enough to kind of do basic tasks, but there's always kind of that idea that you want something that's, hair splitting sharp, razor sharp. So this is definitely up there. This, as far as the sharpness goes, this is a little bit scary to handle the blade. You do have to worry about it biting you. This thing wants to cut. So very nice. I'm really happy with the sharpness. Pleasantly surprised by it. So the dimensions were listed in the beginning of the video, but one thing I want to note is that the weight of this with the original grips, or the original scales, which is basically kind of a nylon plastic scale. It's kind of their own proprietary, version of like the FRN that's used by Spyderco. So essentially it's just a composite grip. It's super light. The weight comes out to 2.68 ounces. With the addition of the Wilkins grips, and of course this MXG titanium deep carry pocket clip, the weight is actually 4.28 ounces. So it is heavier, but I find that it actually, because the grips themselves are a little bit wider at points, it actually helps spread the weight a little bit better. And it honestly kind of, I don't know if it's mentally or if it actually physically is also spreading the weight, or a combination of both. But because it's a little bit larger, it kind of spreads that weight, and it just doesn't feel as heavy. It feels like like it looks. It feels like about that weight, what it looks like, versus before you would kind of pick up a mini grip and you would think it's really light, and it does have the 2.68 ounce weight. I don't know. To me, when I would pick up a mini grip, it just felt it still felt kind of heavy, and I think it really was just because it was, although a small amount of weight, it was just so compact. And these knives do have stainless steel liners throughout, and they're pretty big. They're not milled out or anything like that. So I think that's kind of what carries most of the weight, but it's, it's a lot of weight in one small place, which I feel makes it feel a little bit heavier than the specs would have you believe. And, one of the advantages, I think, of carrying it with the Wilkins grips is that it just kind of makes a little bit more sense, I feel like, in your hand and in your pocket. Visually, I feel like the weight actually matches a little bit better with what you're seeing visually and what you imagine the knife weighs. So just kind of my personal thoughts on that. So, in-hand ergonomics, it has really nice ergonomics. It has some really well-placed jimping that also is carried over because it's actually built into the liners. So the original, the original scales still had this great jimping here and here, but what the Wilkins grips have added is now you have some nice grip here, and then of course into this G10 back spacer, which, you know, for different positions, it definitely gives you some nice purchase there, and good grip. So I mean, I'm really a big fan. I don't find that my hand has to search as much. I feel like with the original scales, because it was round, which gave you a good grip. It was more like a 3-finger, and then these guys would just kind of rest down, and you'd really only be locked in here. I feel like now with this wider, you know, the wider handle, it just my hand, it just finds the grip, and it's, you know, it locks in much nicer. So I'm really happy with that. As far as the action, you know, really smooth, of course, fast, open and close. It has phosphor bronze washers at the pivot. So, you know, there's no ball bearings or anything like that, but with the axis lock, it does give you enough slack kind of in that pivot to where it's really strong, but it's loose enough, you know, so those phosphor bronze washers are still going to be able to do their job. And there's nothing wrong with bronze washers. You know, you'll still find those in, you know, Sebenzas, in the outstanding Spyderco Sage 2, which I've been meaning to do a review on. So the action is really nice. You know, you can deploy it with a thumb flick, or you can just, if you'd like to, just use the access lock. As you can see, it's really hangs freely there, which is really nice. So really smooth. I'm a real fan, definitely. And you know, we're not really any play there. Of course, with an access lock, it's not going to be as locked up as tight as a back lock or a frame lock, but you know, definitely I'd say, if I wasn't just here specifically to critique every little nook and cranny of this knife, beyond that, you know, there's nothing notable as far as blade play or really any type of you know, production shortcomings. So really nice. So in the pocket, it's a really short, you know, knife, and it's very compact. Although, you know, it's a little bit wider now. It's still pretty flat. The original scales definitely were really nice. The clip definitely was not a low riding clip. This one, as you can see, you can pretty much make the handle disappear. Really comfortable. I'm a big fan. I like that it's actually a pretty thick piece of titanium there for this clip. So well done once again, MXG gear, on that. And you know, I feel like the color tones and finishing, you know, it all really ties in and looks very cohesive here. So big fan. Definitely nice in the pocket. So, you know, there are a lot of model variants that you'll find for the Benchmade Mini Grip. You know, recently they did release the newer versions that have CPM 20CV with G10 scales, you know, and then of course there's the classic 154 cm versions with the polymer handles, you know, with tons of different color options and finish options. And you can also go on and actually customize them directly through Benchmade. You can choose, you know, Tonto blades, you want it in a black finish, you know, what type of finish, all types of personalized messaging, different grip colors. So all those options are there for you. So if you know, this is definitely a knife that can be very personalized, you know, exactly to your liking, which is really nice. And this is kind of you know, my take on what I feel is kind of the perfect you know, Benchmade Mini Grip, which is already a great knife kind of in its base form, right? So now let's go into some comparable options, though, because now you've spent a decent amount. You know, these grips alone, you know, they are, if you're outside of Europe, they're 150 euro. So I won't even go into whatever that is in US dollars, because it does fluctuate. So that is a price that holds. If you're in Europe, they're 178 euros and 50 cents. So I think that's pretty much just a difference for the VAT So if you don't have to pay VAT, you're gonna get it for cheaper, of course. But let's look at some comparable options here. You know, one that does come to mind, very similar, except this one is, you know, extremely lightweight. You got your your line steel TRE. Very nice. Of course, there's a G10 version that's a lot cheaper. That's probably closer, you know, in spec to the Doug Ritter grip before you swap the scales on and everything like that. So it is actually pretty competitive. It also has Bowler M390. But the one kind of I have, you know, is the TRE, and you can actually switch it out. So if it's a dedicated, you can make it a flipper, you can put in a thumb stud, you can take off the flipper, you can take everything off and kind of just make it a regular flip. As you can see, it's, there you go. You can just make it kind of a two-hand deployment if you want to as well. So there's definitely different options. This is definitely going to be more feature rich as far as, you know, the bearings and everything's milled out. You know, you have the carbon fiber, which makes it extremely lightweight. They even milled out the carbon fiber. I mean, this is a really, really lightweight knife. I mean, I honestly consider this knife to be kind of a luxury knife, really. This is kind of, to me, is beyond high end. Just the level, you know, the execution. It has every bell and whistle. You know, there's really nothing else that you could say, well, you know, so-and-so knife has this, where, you know, does this have it? I mean, everything down to the rounded spine, you know, with a nice little kind of harpoon contouring there. I mean, milled pocket clip, really, really outstanding piece. And size-wise, you know, it actually is a pretty close comparison, I'd say. I mean, if you can see there, the cutting edge is very similar as far as the length goes. You can even take a look here at pocket clip up, so you can get an idea there. I'll actually pull them both up closely. So very comparable. Also have the stone washed finish. You know, I think the stone washing on here is, you know, a little bit nicer, and I think that's to be expected. But this is actually cheaper. You can actually get this for less now, especially with the new Damascus blade versions out. These are definitely kind of coming down in cost. So that's one option. And then, of course, what comes to mind next is also from Benchmade. It's a new piece, and it is also you know, M390. This is definitely a great knife here. Titanium. This is, you know, bells and whistles as well. I mean, it milled out, just, oh man, I mean, this thing is perfection, really. Great jimping. You can see it's an early production piece here. Extremely sharp, great in hand. I mean, and you know, at the end of the day, they're gonna cost about the same. So it's a real tough call to say which one, you know, I like more out of these two knives. I feel like this one definitely has a lot of personality, and it's gonna be harder to find on the street. This one, you know, it's out of the box. It's just so nice as is. I mean, all the little details here. I mean, if you just take a look, I mean, even the standoffs in the back have that little, you know, kind of tooling to the little gear shaped in there. I mean, just the execution is just really excellent. So you can see you got a little bit of jimping there on the lock bar. I mean, the sound that it makes for me is just the thing that really sets this knife apart. So it's just crisp. That sound is really amazing. Great detent. It almost reminds me of a flipper's detent. Nice and tight. So, I mean, there's gonna be some times your thumb isn't gonna grab and you're gonna misfire it, but when it grabs, I mean, man, that thing is magic in the hand. So great knife, you know, very competitive option. You know, how are you going to spend $300 on a Benchmade? You know, that's kind of up to you. These are definitely two very competitive options, and I'll be doing a full review on this bad boy soon, so definitely keep an eye out for that. This is, you know, kind of a current favorite. I'd say the one downfall, shortcoming it has over the Mini Grip is that the pocket clip, although it's just, you know, it's not going to be as functional, which is kind of the story of most milled pocket clips. Definitely looks great, you know, feels great in your hand. It just really, it's nice, you know, but you know, there's not much room to get material when you're trying to stick that into your pocket there. So it's going to be, you know, you might have to move your, you know, kind of stretch your pocket out a little bit, maybe use two hands to get this in, versus here, you know, this is going to be, it's going to go right into your pocket. You know, you don't even have to look. This is just going to slide right on. So that's probably the one thing where I'd say decisive win for the Mini Grip. It's just legendary and just great. I mean, there's a reason why these are kind of the bread and butter of Benchmade. So let's go ahead and we'll leave it at that. We'll actually put a couple of these back out here, and so we'll just kind of end it on a little bit closer shot there. So you can kind of just get an idea scale wise, you know, the size of these knives. You know, I think a lot of people kind of look at the TRE and think, oh, that knife is too small for me. I mean, it's about the size of a small Sebenza, and people love the small Sebenza, but when it comes to the TRE, people kind of feel like it's a little small. I feel like it does have so much design crammed into it. It might come off as being feeling a little bit small. But I think, you know, kind of once you get it in hand and have it in pocket, you really get accustomed to the size pretty quick. So in closing, you know, the bottom line here really is this is a premium version of a classic, and it won't break the bank, you know, especially if you don't put on any kind of custom scales. And then with the WilkinsGrip scales, I mean, essentially you have, I mean, some people could probably consider that a custom knife, and it's built in your own home, right? So you're taking that non-standard blade, and you're putting it in the non-standard scales. I mean, really, it's just kind of the access lock and a couple of screws that share anything as far as commonalities with the regular Mini Grip. You know, everything else is just extremely upgraded and you know, near unrecognizable in comparison to kind of the base model and what you see right in front of you guys now. So with that said, thanks for hanging in there. I know this was a long one. It's just, you know, kind of trying to review the grip as well as the blade and all those aspects. Definitely made this one a little bit longer. But if you made it to the end, thank you for hanging in there. Please hit like on this video if you liked it or found it useful, and if you haven't already, do subscribe for future updates. Thanks guys, bye.